It's finally time to talk about this amazing ship in front of you. The Forrest Sherman has been so much fun that honestly, I've been playing this ship and putting off this review because I've just been enjoying playing it that much. So, to start with, this ship is available for coal. It is 232,000 coal, and if you have your coupon available, it is down to 174,000 coal. And for that amount, I'd say this ship is a bargain. This is easily one of my favorite ships at tier 10 at the moment. To really understand this, though, let's take a look at what the Sherman has compared to other destroyers at tier 10. And we're going to start off with DPM. This really is the selling point of the Sherman. So, yeah, 324,000 DPM with SAP is unbelievable. And the HE DPM is pretty good too at 216,000. But really, it is this SAP that's so amazing. The ability to pen 36 millimeters with this SAP means it is devastating for most battleships, cruisers, destroyers that you're going to be facing. 32 millimeters is such a common threshold for armor, and that the SAP gets more than that in pen means it's so useful and versatile. A lot of times I'm only swapping to the HE when it's a fully angled battleship. Everything else tends to get SAP. And if you didn't know, SAP has massively improved pen angles. You have to be basically bow in or stern in to someone using SAP if you even want to hope to bounce the SAP. And that's assuming they don't just hit your superstructure and get full pens anyway. SAP is one of the strongest ammo types in the game because it combines the incredible alpha damage of armor piercing with the consistency of high explosive and puts it all into one neat, I would say, overpowered package. So even though the SAP is at the bottom of this chart compared to armor piercing pen, well, SAP is just a much better ammo type because the shells don't overpen, and these shells have massively improved pen angles compared to the armor piercing you're seeing at the higher end of this chart. DPM and penetration is all well and good and really nice, but without a good flight time, it's really kind of useless. And that's where Sherman is extremely good. You'll notice the flight times out to 13 kilometers is actually only 8.3 seconds. This means these shells are incredibly easy to lead, and you're going to see that throughout this video, and I'm sure other videos on the Sherman, that these guns are very easy to use and quite nice. Basically, they have the same arcs as the Austin does at tier 10, and that is a light cruiser. And if you've played something like the Jinan, the recently released Pan-Asian cruiser at tier 10, well, that ship got nerfed flight times, and it is so much harder to use than the guns on the Sherman or the guns on the Austin. Just because I tended to use SAP most of the time with this ship doesn't mean the HE is bad at all. In fact, the fires per minute of the Forrest Sherman is one of the highest out of any of the tier 10 destroyers in the game at 10.8. A 9% fire chance combined with this rate of fire means it's very easy to light fires on battleships, cruisers, even destroyers. But a tactic you could probably use is light up a fire on a battleship relatively quickly and then swap over to the SAP to get the higher alpha damage. Well, assuming that the battleship is taking fire prevention, their superstructure is on fire. That is something you can do to maximize damage output on some of the battleships in the game. While this ship does seem a little bit overpowered so far given the DPM and consistency and ease of use of these guns, there are some weaknesses to this ship, and it really starts with its concealment. It's really not a very stealthy destroyer. At 8.3 kilometers detect, you're basically like an Elbing out there. So it's not a ship that's going to be contesting cap circles as easily as something like the Gearing or Daring, that kind of ship. Fortunately, though, the Sherman has a good base range, and that can be buffed further with captain skills or taking different upgrades on this ship, meaning the difference or the gap between the detection range of the Sherman and the maximum firing range is quite large. And to me, the larger that gap is, the more comfortable a ship is to play. If you have a lot of room between when you get detected and your maximum gun firing range, it means that you can play a little stealthier around the map, and you're always generally going to be able to fire at whoever has you spotted, or even be able to farm battleships behind the destroyers, submarines that are trying to outspot you. The primary concern of a gunboat is often its HP pool, an ability to stay in the game, constantly using its guns, firing, that sort of thing. Sitting in smoke and using guns is fine, assuming you have someone spotting for you. Oftentimes, though, you don't really have that luxury, so having a high HP pool, or good armor, or the ability to heal back a lot of damage, or a combination of all three, is very useful for a gun-focused destroyer. And the Sherman is just okay here. It has a great base HP pool of 24,900, putting it well near the top of the HP pool charts. However, it does not get any special armor, and it does not get a heal. So you're left with 24,900 HP, assuming you don't take Survivability Expert, which I would certainly recommend you do. And of course, lastly, to do with survivability of a gunboat destroyer, how fast is it? Marceau and Kleber, Kaba can really get away with some very aggressive maneuvers because of their speed and how difficult it is to hit them. The Sherman is bad here. This is the massive weak point of the Sherman. Less than 34 knots of speed. That is very, very slow, meaning it's very easy to hit this ship at medium to close ranges. And at the same time, it means this gunboat-focused destroyer with not great concealment can't move around the map very quickly. This is, of course, a massive strength of a ship like the Marceau and Kleber, the ability to reposition and put your guns to use where they're going to impact the battle the most. And the last two features of the ship I'm really going to gloss over here. The torpedoes are really quite bad since there's only 2 per side and fixed angles. They are gearing torps, so they have good range and decent damage, but don't be expecting to carry games with these torpedoes. This ship is a gunboat through and through. And the other thing we have to talk about is the anti-aircraft armament of this ship. It's not great. I found it did not shoot down planes very consistently at ranges, so I opted to often just have my AA disabled, trying to stay in concealment and not have the carrier strike me. If they did, then I would open up my AA as soon as they spot me and pop defensive fire to try and deter them from striking me further. But really, I did not find this anti-aircraft to be nearly as strong as other ships like the Holland, for example. That ship can actually deter a carrier from striking an entire area of the map. The Sherman isn't that good. Overall, I really, really enjoyed the Sherman. The ship is an excellent gunboat destroyer at tier 10 and brings a bit of a different flavor from the traditional gunboats that we have, where the Kleber, Marceau, Kaba are very speedy and rely on their ability to dodge shells to get maximum value out of their ship and use their insane speed to reposition around the map. The Sherman also gets amazing DPM, much like the Marceau, and since Marceau is also a coal ship, it's likely what you're going to be considering alongside the Sherman. The things to consider really are the DPM is pretty similar. Marceau has harder guns to use because of the poor flight times, whereas the Sherman has really easy guns to use. But the Marceau has this amazing ability to dodge shells because of the speed and reposition around the map to where it will be most useful. The downside of the Sherman is that you're going to eat a lot more shell damage because you're slower and don't have that improved saturation. And perhaps its biggest weak point is its inability to reposition around the map quickly. If you're someone who is not confident in your destroyer position and reading the map, knowing where to go in advance, the Sherman is going to perform worse for you than a Marceau, where you can decide things a little bit later, and the speed of the ship makes up for that lack of decision. A Sherman player really needs to understand the map and know where to place their ship well in advance, because the ship is just that slow. As for the build that I settled on running with this ship, it is a full gun build. You'll notice no concealment. I am running Fearless Brawler, extra main battery and AA specialist for that 5% DPM. I'm also running main battery and AA expert for the range, getting myself up to a nice 15.1 kilometers. It's very usable, these guns within that range. Also, Adrenaline Rush. We're not taking Superintendent, we're not taking Concealment Expert, because I don't have a heal. I'm not getting much value out of Superintendent other than the extra smoke. That's really about it there. And Survivability Expert is much more valuable in terms of getting my HP pool up 28,400 is pretty decent to start with, although, again, no heal, no special armor on this ship. Last stand is really a must for a ship this slow that wants to be firing its guns so often. Preventive maintenance is also great for that. I had an extra point left over, so I went for incoming fire alert. Alternatively, I do think a good hybrid build would drop Fearless Brawler as well as main battery and AA Specialist and run Superintendent and Concealment. That could do a great job of potentially going in and contesting caps and still being a good damage dealer. But unfortunately, the concealment really isn't that great. It only gets around 6.5 kilometers concealment with the full concealment build. And when you're running into, let's say, a daring that has 6 kilometer detection and has nearly the DPM to keep up with you and a heal, it can be a little bit rough contesting caps in the Sherman, which is why I've opted for the full gun build and trying to out-damage things when they do pop up being spotted. I'm really not trying to go in and be the first destroyer in. You'll notice I'm running Aiming Systems Mod 1. That's because there's only 3 guns here, and getting the most shells on target is going to be extremely useful for a full gun build. Main Battery Mod 3, excellent for this gun build, and I am running Concealment here, because the other ones I don't really find particularly useful. Of course, running Propulsion Mod, considering we don't have a speed boost, and if we do stop in smoke, pretty easy target for Torpedoes. The Hydro, of course, is useful, but it is only a 5 kilometer Hydro, and with a not great concealment, it's not particularly useful for charging in and hydroing people in their smoke screens, but it's good for spotting torpedoes and potentially getting the drop on a DD who's not expecting you to have Hydro. I'm sure you saw the clip already of the Z52 that I managed to take out like that. Engine room protection, very useful again for keeping engine and rudder alive, and main armaments mod 1. A pretty standard build, I would say. As for the random battles stats I managed to achieve, it's looking pretty good. After 13 games of random battles, I am in at 134,000 damage, an 85% win rate, and a 16.5 destruction ratio. Pretty insane, and my most per game was 204,000. Nothing crazy, but it was just so consistent in this ability to do a lot of damage and have high battle impact with that victory ratio. So that does it for the Forrest Sherman review. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something about this ship. If you don't have it already, now you know what you're getting into if you try to get this ship. But thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate you guys watching these videos. They take a little more time to make these ones, so I'm glad you guys definitely enjoy them. I will say, for those of you who made it this far, thanks for getting to the end of the video. And something special for you is, do you think I should apply to CC again? I'm very much considering it, since I do enjoy making these videos on the more in-depth reviews on ships, and being a community contributor would certainly help me do that much more. I can get access to the ships sooner and get these videos out a little bit sooner to you guys, not, what is it, a month after the Sherman released. That might be something I'm considering in the future. I'd like to know your thoughts on that down below in the comments. But that's it for me for today. Thank you very much for watching again, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.